All right, let's go.
Hi everybody, Julie's World Crochet. I am Julie. Welcome back to my channel. This is Whip and Talk number 3 for the Lucky Exam blanket. It's actually probably 3.5 because of course I did one last night and I got probably halfway through and had to pause to get a drink because it's very dry in here. And sure enough, I did not turn it back on. I didn't unpause when I came back. So that is a complete waste. So here I am again, finishing up where I was at. This is our Lucky Exam blanket that I'm working on. There is a tutorial that will come that will give you a much better look and more specifics when I come along. Let me come to the other side because there is a right side and a wrong side. So you can see how this is looking and where I'm at. We have the original panel, our basket weave stitch, the panel again, a raspberry stitch panel in the middle, and then now I am doing the other blanket weave stitch. I just have my last kind of middle panel over here. If you've watched the others, you know that this little region here that I'm showing you through this is part of the free pattern on Yarnspirations called the Aran Isle Throw. That link is in the description if you want to see exactly how to do that little region. It's got just a bobble stitch and then a crossed double crochet there between some ridges. It's a simple little pattern and panel that I'm using, like brackets around each larger piece and wider piece. This one is the raspberry stitch panel to make this kind of like a stitch sampler blanket. It is much longer. This is working the width right now, or each part goes on the width because I am working it long ways, and this is a much longer throw for how that'll work. Anyway, I am doing the blanket stitch. Have I lost where I'm at? No, this is the beginning. I am over here. Here it is. And we're just going to work on finishing this basket weave, not blanket stitch. I am so sorry. I know I keep doing this and getting it wrong. I don't know why my brain will not make this adjustment. The basket weave stitch section, I'm actually on, where are we at here? I've got 1, 2, 3. I am now working my starting the last row of my little final band, I guess, of the basket weave. I only do 4 for this section, so I'm getting there. I'm almost done. I'm just going to show you really quickly. Let me move this out of the way. I just want to show you, this is setting up the first row. So like I did 4 rows here to make this section, and then it went and became 4 rows of these ones here are the back posts. That's what gives the horizontal lines. And then the 4 rows right above this were the front post. That's what gives it the vertical lines. And of course, that's what we're alternating, right? So that we can get this grid effect. So here I am. This is the first row of another band, which means that they need to become opposite. And that's what I want to show you. So what I'm seeing, I'm working the last little bit across. Here are the front post double crochets, which is what I had done before. And now when I'm coming back, I'm setting up my next row. It changes it so I can make the grid. So this next row, wherever there were front post double crochets, I'm now putting in 4 back post double crochets. Right? You can see here, these were back posts. That's why they're horizontal. And now for this new row, here are my 4 front post double crochets. So when I come through and continue with the last few rows, I will do this to set up that final grid. So that's what I want to show you here. These are back posts down here, but I've got my new row. So wherever there are back posts, I'm going to put in a front post double crochet. And I'm doing it kind of at the end here so that you can see when I come around, I'll be able to show you how that looks. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now I'm on my last few here that were vertical. Therefore, I now need to do back post so I can change them to the horizontal look. They're going to stay on the horizontal look. And And last but not least, oops, no, I like to do it this way. There we go. Oh, come on. So that's the end of that row. I'm going to show you here. So I just finished that row. That's where I did my front posts on top of these. And now I did the back post on top of my vertical because I'm switching it over. So now when I come back on my row, this is what I'm going to be seeing. And now I just have to reinforce it. And that's what makes it so easy. I'm just going to do whatever the stitch below is. These are vertical for me on this view, so I will put them in as front posts. These are the horizontal. I'll do the back post so that I continue it on. Let me do that really quickly so that I can show you. I'm starting with the stacked single crochet. It's just going to make it's just going to fill in a little bit nicer and sit nicer. So front post, because it's vertical, front post, and my fourth front post. My stacked single crochet counts as a bar, so that's, you know, that counts as one of the four. Now I have the horizontal lines, so I'm going to do back post. There's one, there's two, there's three, and four. Oops. Four, the whole post, not just a thread. Okay, so now if I show you that part right there, you can see I went this way because I was going to the end. You can see I had changed it over. Here were my vertical, and now I've changed it to back post so that I can get the horizontal. Here's the vertical, whoops, that I put in. And coming up, once I turned and started my row back here, I'm hoping you can see how repeating the same stitch where it's either vertical or whatever I need to make it the horizontal stitch according to what I'm seeing. You end up, this is how we end up with this grid being created, right? You can see these are the first two rows that are going to, eventually I'll have four, that makes it a much more distinctive square that we can see all the way across. Okay, so I'm just going to continue this in the right direction all the way along and finish, hopefully finish, our basket weave stitch today on this section, and I will be on the very last panel then. Really, I got all my yarn mixed up in here again. Come here. Come here. There we go. Fold it around. Let's get this straight. Let's get myself set up correctly. Now, last time we talked about movies, I've talked about Discworld. I actually want to talk about art a little bit. I was thinking about, I had shown you about my finger guns issue that I hold my yarn wonky because I have a tendon or some sort of connection, so my index finger doesn't quite work the same way as the average person's, I guess. And I was thinking that maybe that's why I had never really gotten into knitting, because I feel like you use your left hand a little bit more purposefully than I do here. With crochet, I don't know if purposefully is the right word, but whatever it is, I mean, maybe that's why I never really got into knitting. But it struck a thought with me that and I'm wondering what other crafts you do. You know, like, we like crafts, we're creative people. What are there other crafts and I don't know, hobbies that you explore, like creative hobbies? And the reason I ask is I've done a lot. Like, I really like a number of things. I like to explore them. I did paper tool, I've done embroidery, and I still do occasionally, but I've really kind of fallen in love with crochet, and there's just so much to do with it. But part of it could just be that we're better able to do it. What is banging that's causing this to make sounds on me? I'm hearing a sound that's annoying me. That I'm going to do here. I'm wondering because, for instance, I have friends, like, everyone's creative differently if they have different hobbies. So I have friends that are very artistic, very creative, and they love to draw, or types of, like, one loves to paint. And both of them find it very meditative, very soul soothing, very it's just pleasing to do. The same way I feel about crochet. When I'm just working along, it feels good. It my brain is relaxed with it. It just really settles in. It's very soothing, and in addition to the fact that I really like the creativity part of it. But that happens to be my outlet. And I have friends who say, like to draw, love to draw or paint. I have other friends who have other creative kind of artistic hobbies. There's some hobbies that I want to do that I haven't taken the time to explore yet. There's a part of me, and I've always really wanted to learn how to throw pottery. Not ceramics, like I don't mean working with slip and having a mold. I really want to be on a pottery wheel. I don't know if I'll have a ghost moment, but at least a pottery wheel and throw pottery. But I haven't gotten to that yet. That to me takes an investment of time and effort, and that's just not one that I've gone on to explore. But I remember when I was little, probably like 9, 10 years old, and after Christmas, you're visiting your different friends and you're showing off what you got. And I remember one of my little friends had gotten like a kid's pottery wheel, and man, I wanted that so badly. I just thought that was so awesome. And I really enjoy every time I've seen pottery, every time I've seen throwing, I don't know, it has always interested me. So one day I probably will find a way. Maybe I'll buy a kid's set just so I could try it out. I don't know. We do have a place here that you can take lessons from. I just don't know that I don't know how I'll approach it, but one day my hand's going to be in that clay. I know it will. And as a little aside, one thing I love, if you know who Seth Rogen is, the comedian, the writer, actor, he apparently a few years ago, his wife took him to a pottery class and he just loved it. And I think that's how I felt when I first started picking up crochet. The first, little like project I did when I was just learning my first few stitches, I loved it far more than my skill level kind of would have counted for. It really, something connected with me. And as I understand it, that's what Seth Rogen felt when he was working on the pottery. And I really enjoy this so much because he got right into it, loved it so much that, if you don't know, he's Canadian. And so he developed, there's a television show, Great Canadian Potters, just like that reality, like Top Chef, Top this, exactly the same thing, but with pottery. And first of all, I'm surprised how much I enjoyed watching the contestants figure out their creativity for it and all of the things you can do. It was even better. It really inspired me that one day I probably will do it. But one thing I really enjoy is how much he enjoys it. You can see, because of course he makes guest appearances and judgments and he does demonstrations for the different techniques, and you can just see how much he enjoys it. And for me, that is crochet. And I'm wondering what it is for you. Is crochet your thing? Or, do you love it? Is there something else that you also do? The other reason I bring this up is because I really love art. The UK, and I don't know, I think they're starting, I think Canada has a show starting like that. It's expanded from where it's been, but I've been watching it for so many years that I actually don't know outside of the UK where they might have these shows. But if you've ever heard of Portrait Artist of the Year or Landscape Artist of the Year, it's a reality competition for art, obviously. And I do really love art. I enjoy looking at it. I love the process of making it, but I can't draw to save my life. I struggle, and I did take up over the last year, and I still continue to work at it, painting. Watercolor painting specifically, because it's an inexpensive way to explore and look into painting. And one of the reasons I did is because I love art so much, but I struggle so much. It is not easy for me. It is not something where I can just express myself. I really have to fight to use that medium to express my ideas. And I never understood, and I always struggled to explain why it is that I struggle so much more. And now I have a good idea why. I'm wondering if you guys have ever heard of aphantasia. I have aphantasia. Aphantasia is very simply called the inability to visualize. Let me explain. First of all, we only found out a couple of years ago that this is a thing. And I probably, when it first got reported, I probably found out a little bit early on because in my previous life, I was a research scientist. So I still read a lot of scientific journals and reports and studies, etc. And this one really interested me. So of course I grabbed on it. And as soon as I started reading, I was like, oh my God. And so what they've really identified, and this has been true, but a small percentage of the population, like 1 to 3%, does not have a mind's eye. I do not have any visual images mentally. Now, they say the inability to visualize, which is true. And they've also determined that this is true for auditory, for taste, smell, basically your senses, where you're getting sensory information. And first of all, I should say, until I found out that this was a thing, it's not just that I have no mind's eye. What was really shocking is you guys have a mind's eye. You are literally seeing something in your mind, which blows me away. I have never experienced that. I did not have any sense that anyone experienced things differently than I do, which is, I mean, of course it's true. Of course we're all different. I'm an immunologist. So one of the big things to know is that there isn't like a one ideal, the one perfect brain person setup that we're striving to be. There isn't a perfect immune profile that everyone should be, and what all the diversity is just, less than perfect. That is not how it works, and that's not even the ideal. That would not be useful for like any species to have one particular ideal. What makes us robust and growing and really brings out all the potential for humans as a group and an immunology perspective is the diversity. There isn't one perfect setup. It is that there is such variety and a mixing and matching that makes us stronger, that brings more to the table. And I think that's very true when it comes to how we process information, the whole sensory information, our memories, the way we think. There isn't a one perfect thing. We are all different, and that is the most important part. So I don't feel like I'm lacking. I am lacking. I'm not able to have these visual images, but that brings other things to the table for me as well. For instance, well, I'll continue on and maybe it'll become a little more clear. So it's okay that I don't, but still, I just don't see anything. And if you do, like if you were to imagine, it's especially something you've seen before, but you can imagine an apple on a table, or your childhood bedroom, or your pet, when you imagine them, you are seeing in your head that image. I don't even know if it's like a 2-dimensional image or 3-dimensional. I would be really interested. Like, are you seeing this 3-dimensionally, or is it just like you took a snapshot of whatever that was and that's what it looks like? It's just fascinating to me. I don't see any of that. And I don't have a problem. Like, when you see the cop shows and they're going to bring in the sketch artist, that always was weirding to me because I couldn't describe anything really effectively visually. I couldn't describe my mother's face to a sketch artist. I couldn't, I can tell you what colors my cat is and stuff, but I couldn't describe visually, which I think is kind of wild because I don't have any problem recognizing people. I don't struggle to recognize faces. Maybe when I first meet people I can recognize them, but not to confuse them with someone else. But generally I'm really good at it. Even when you see who are these stars when they were young, I can like recognize who they are in disguise and or young people. That's not a problem. I do pretty well in that stuff. I have a great memory for visual information. What I can't do, and this is kind of how I explain aphantasia and related things to people, I can't re-experience visual information. I can't re-look at it. Like that same police thing when you've got a witness there and they say we bring in a hypnotist and they hypnotize you and they see the picture and you recall and you see the car going away. You see the license plate. Zoom in and look really clearly at the license plate. That's never going to happen for me. If I didn't get that information at the time I saw it, like look at it and remember it, or say it out loud or something to help me specifically remember it, I will never be able to go back and look at it again. I can't pull it up to re-experience. And I can give you some other examples. If it is true for me for all of my senses as far as I can tell. So if I tell you to think of your favorite chocolate bar, or your Grammy's best soup, chicken soup, whatever it is that or tacos, something with a distinctive taste or flavor that you know and have experienced. Do you taste it again? Like, can you rethink of it and kind of taste it again? I can't. That never happens. If I want to taste chocolate again, I need to stick another piece in my mouth. That's the only way that works. And auditory might be the easier one for people to get and understand. I have, it's true with audio. So first of all, do you have an inner voice? Do you have an inner monologue talking to you? I really never understood where my inner voice is so critical and says terrible things to me. I didn't realize a lot of you guys really mean an actual voice. I have no inner voice. There's no monologue going on. It's just me. So a couple things that are really interesting about that, and one of the ways that it affects or changes people who have aphantasia, there are commonalities for how we experience and function in the world related to that. So, for example, when we read scary movies and or read a book and you're using your imagination, or whatever it is, like Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll, whatever your scary movie is, we are less distressed than many other people. Probably because I can visualize it. I can think about it and know those ideas, but I'm not re-visualizing. If I see a scary movie, I know I was really scared. I can, remember all of it. It's not like I forget it or anything like that. But what's happened is it's not coming back to me. I'm not seeing the jump scare in my head again. I just know it happened. Stuff like that. So in a way, that's a little bit helpful. And with the auditory stuff, like, have you ever, when you're almost falling asleep and you're just, the same kind of thing where you're almost falling asleep and you get that, falling kind of sensation? That's called a hypnagogic hallucination. It just means a hallucination we experience when we're close to sleep, in the process of transitioning into sleep. And there's all kinds with all different sensations, like all different senses can have hypnagogic hallucinations. They're totally normal. There's nothing wrong here. It is ubiquitous across humanity. We all experience these things. Now, an auditory hallucination, if you're almost falling asleep, have you ever heard someone say your name? It's almost always going to be a voice you know well, like a parent's voice or your partner's voice or a child, someone whose voice you know really well, but saying your name. You suddenly hear, like for me, I hear, Julie, right? And you're like, First of all, that's an auditory hallucination from falling asleep. It's totally fine, totally normal. You are not hearing weird voices. Now, the interesting thing is I have zero inner monologue. If I think of music, I know what the melody is. I recognize the melodies, elements of music. It's not like I don't know what we're talking about. I can come up with the lyrics and stuff, but I don't hear it in my head again. I do I'm pretty sure this is why I truly cannot sing. I cannot. I don't even know if I'd have a nice voice. As it is right now, no. But I hear that everyone can kind of be trained to sing in a decent capacity, to use their voice well. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be me. Part of it is I can't hear it in my head. I couldn't match my voice to what it needs to be or what it is I'm imagining, because I can't hear it. I can't break down the elements. I can't examine it or experience it again. But so I get nothing. But at the same time, I have had the auditory hallucination of hearing a voice. So that means that the mechanics of creating that inner voice, I am able to do that. Like my brain is able to make that happen. What can't happen, but that's that is literally the only time that I have heard something that is not real, right? Like I have no inner voice, no monologue, no imagination where I can imagine something as far as thinking about it, but I can't hear it or experience it in any way. All I experience is exactly what's happening. So that little voice that saying my name, like that Julie, is the only time I have ever heard anything that was not actually a sound that other people can hear too. And that's a little bit wild for me. I think that's really neat because it means that the mechanics are there, but there's something in my brain that is not making the connection and allowing me to use that in some way, which is really weird. I do think that that's one of the reasons that I'm a scientist, and it's true that people with aphantasia are more likely to be involved with mathematics and sciences, probably for that reason that we are absolutely confined kind of to the observable world. It is less intrusive. We don't really have a lot of other sights and sounds and experiences that are not right there. So there's a real tie with reality. And I think that's kind of why. That's not to say if you have aphantasia, you're not a creative person. You can be wonderful. I feel like I'm a creative person. And I've definitely been creative in my life. And additionally, for instance, aphantasia is the visual. It was called aphantasia at first. Remember, really, this is only a couple years old, like literally less than 5 years, I think, that we've been aware of this as an actual event, something that really exists in our human society. So it hasn't been very long, and they're just starting to, I think for today might be the first time I heard of a unique name that's been assigned to having auditory aphantasia. For me, it's all the sense. I can't smell something again and re-experience it. Like I know if I went into an outhouse, it smells awful, but I don't experience it to remind myself that it smells awful, and I'm not creative about it. I can only recall what I thought about it at the time. If that's the only way for me to put it. I can't re-experience it. I can only think about it and think about what I thought about it at the time. So I thought that was really neat. And that might be one of the reasons I struggle with certain kinds of like artwork, like drawing. I really struggle. It is a fight. Like it's not easy, and I have to put a lot of effort into learning how to do that. And building up skills that work for me in order to be able to do any kind of drawing or art. So that's, and things like absolute realism are even more difficult. Like I'm not interested in doing photorealism. Besides which photorealism is more of a craftsmanship, technical craftsmanship maybe, whereas having a difference is a little bit more about there's less expression in photorealism. But I would really struggle with photorealism. Like if I'm going to try and draw, I need a picture right there to get any kind of proportion or anything, because I can't do it in my head. I can't see it to think about what I'm doing. And I'm wondering, like, is there anyone else out there who might have the same thing? Do you even know or have an idea of what I'm talking about? And it's really interesting because there's all kinds of stuff. I told you I couldn't describe anyone, even my own son, even myself. I probably couldn't, I don't think I could describe to a sketch artist. I can't. I don't know why, but I can't make, well, I do know why. I can't look at it. If I had a picture right in front of me, then I could do it, but it kind of defeats the purpose of needing a sketch artist, right? Yeah, that would be silly. But if I do, let me see what else. Like there's other things that, and other types of creativity. For instance, I wrote a novel. So years ago, I was going to be out of work or unable to meaningfully work for almost a year. So I needed something to do, and I had a story idea for a long time. So I sat down and I wrote a novel. And it's not that it's not work, and it's not that it's not hard, but I didn't struggle to make that happen. So are there crafts that you really love to do that you really struggle to do, like that is much more difficult, say, than the average craft? Is there, do you have aphantasia of any kind? Do you have any particular senses? Or do you find that you are super creative, that it's always in your head and you see all kinds of stuff? I think that's just as fascinating. It makes our experience and how we go through our lives very, very different. And I don't know, I'm fascinated by the differences of everyone's experience. It's such an impact in who we are and how we all work together. I find it so neat. And I especially like thinking about like how our brains work to shape who we are. Anyway, so that's what aphantasia is. And I have it, but I have it on all kinds of stuff. And I'm only now learning how it makes a difference for what I do and don't do. Which is all kinds of cool in a way. So now I'm coming back on my second row. Yeah, see, this is why, again, I use a stitch marker. I don't know if I told you guys already. I can't remember if I did it in 1 and 2, so I better tell you now. I'm doing this basket weave stitch, and what I do is, for doing the basket weave, I use a stitch marker. And the reason I do is so that I don't have to worry about the number of rows I'm doing. And it's because the way it looks, I can't always tell once I get going how many rows I've done. If I'm just flipping back and forth, this is pretty much looks the same at both sides, other than the very beginning that has my tail end. The one end I'm going to have to weave over there. That I want to do, and I know if you look at this, see how nice those squares are? I know, 4 stitches across, 4 rows up. That's how I get a really nice square out of this. But when I'm doing it, it looks like, it feels like 4 rows is going to be a little bit too long, because you can see it here. Doesn't it look like it's long here, like too long? What we have to remember is this is actually the horizontal bar. It just isn't really clear yet because I don't have more kind of sitting on them. I just find that maybe it's, again, an experience. I haven't done it enough that it's easy in my eyes. So I always am doubting myself, and I'm solving this problem by putting a stitch marker when I first start the rows. That way, you know, if I put the stitch marker 1 down, coming back is row number 2. Great. That's where I'm coming up now. That's row number 2. I'm going to go down and do 3 and come back. And when I see the stitch marker again and I'm far enough away, I know I've done 4 rows. This way, I don't have to keep looking at it. I never have that moment of stress and self-doubt. I get back, oh yeah, we're on row 4. I'm done. Time to switch over. That's what makes it nice and easy. And again, like I told you, when you go along, it is, you're not accidentally putting in 5 stitches here. I have 4 posts. I'm going to continue them with the vertical. I don't have to think about any of this. I can just plug along, click into what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3. Click into what I'm doing and follow what's underneath. So by using the stitch marker, that takes the last amount of thinking. It takes care of that. So I don't have to think or fuss in any way. There's no stress. I can just continue on, and finish the row through without having to worry about it, and I can just chat with you. I really like this whip and talk. I really like just chatting. Apparently I love the sound of my own voice. I'm hoping it's not offending anyone out there. You can always skip around to the parts that you want, but I can only do it if I don't have to like work too hard to think. You know, there are some stitches, some kinds of pattern that you really have to pay a lot more attention to. I told you that I thought that this was coming along and working up really kind of quickly, more quickly than I would expect necessarily based on, I mean, I've only made a few blankets so far. It is coming along really fast. I found it only took me a couple days to get most of this done, and this is a good size throw. So, and I think part of it is just because I've chosen stitches here that I don't have to think about, you know, really hard. I don't have to pay too much attention to. That it's, and of course, I think possibly also the kind of yarn, but it means it makes it really easy to just work across. So we'll start, I'm on row number 3, and this is my last band. So I'm going to do row 3 down and row 4 back up, and I will be done with this basket weave stitch for this section. See how nice that looks? I know it's been hard to see some of the stitches before, but I'm trying to do better. It's an overcast day. It's that window is my little nightmare. I'm doing we have a bunch of renovations and changes that are happening in the rest of the house. So this is going to be my little video room that I'm going to have to use for the next little while until we get all the rest of it done and get things set up the way they're supposed to be. So we're just stuck with it, but it's very sunny. We have beautiful big blue skies all the time. So on those days, the amount of light that I get coming in, I actually have lights on over here, but it's so bright that I know it gives me a really bad back color. So I'm hoping that we're seeing the stitches a little bit better. See, I'll actually take a moment since we're doing so well. Here is that panel that I have that has the bobble stitch, the cross double crochet, and the bobble stitch again, right? And then there's our raspberry stitch, which just gave us good coverage without being like too tight, too yarn sucky. So good progress on this. After this basket weave stitch, I'm going to do that little panel again with the bobbles, and that'll be it. I'll be ready for my border. I'm really excited. I hope I get, I did check today and my order shipped. I had to order another skein of this yarn because, again, I adapted it, and once I decided to make it bigger, I was not going to have quite enough for the size that I was now making. So I had to order another skein. I won't be able to start the border until I get it, but I will be able to finish like the main body of the blanket. It's just the border that I have to do, and I'm glad it worked out that way because I don't know about the lot number, right? I'm kind of hoping, so I ordered from Hirschner's, that's where I originally got this from, and I'm kind of hoping this is Premier Basics. It's very common, like it's one that lots of people use, not a big deal. I ordered this batch probably 6 weeks ago, maybe is when I got it. I want to say 6 weeks ago, somewhere in there. Now, as popular as it is, I feel like because it's popular, they're going to have quite a lot in storage. This is gray. There's only so many people buying gray necessarily. Like, it comes in lots and lots of colors. So my thinking is I still might have, I don't think that there's going to be much difference. There is difference in dye lots, but I'm hoping that being constantly produced, that it's not really distinctive. And I'm actually hoping that I'm going to get the same dye lot because it was only 6 weeks ago. I got a whole bunch, and how much gray Premier Basics is anyone ordering? So I feel like I've kind of got good odds to get the same dye lot. But if not, I still think it'll work out because, which is why I've continued on. Like, if I had to do this earlier and it was going to be about like half of my blanket or whatever I was going to need it for, I probably would have waited till I saw what the new yarn looked like, and were there any distinctions, were there any differences, because then I could have, say, used the new yarn for, say, the panel. So even if it is slightly different in color, it's not going to look broken in my project. And that's where I'm at now. I know I have enough yarn to finish the main part of the blanket. So even if the dye lot means that it has a very subtle kind of difference, it's going to be for the border. So it'll still look balanced and symmetrical, and I think it'll be fine. That's the plan anyway. So we're going to have to see how that works. Anyway, so yeah, if you, here we go. If you, back to the Aphantasia part, if you know of anyone, if you've never heard of this before, take a moment to think about it and talk to some people. My friend, when I first described Aphantasia, and she really likes brain science and neurology and stuff like that. So she was fascinated by it and did a bunch of like reading into it and looking at it. And she was telling her family, and her daughter kind of stopped for a moment, just stunned. And I was like, you guys can see stuff in your head? Like, she was like, yeah, I never imagined, she realized and she learned that she has aphantasia, and her own mother had no clue. Like, I mean, I had no clue. Honestly, the idea that you guys can see and hear and re-experience this kind of sensory information still blows my mind. Like, I mean, I'm probably, I won't say a little sad, but you know I'm missing out on something out of this. I'm missing out. I'd love to know what that experience is like. You know, when you, and it explains why, you know, there's people who are like, they're like, oh, I love a sunset, and they're, you know, somebody, I am not really tied up in sentimental visual images. I'm sentimental about some stuff. I am, I have nostalgia. It's not that those things are missing, but not in the same way. Like, I'm not, you know, if I think of a sunset, I don't see it. I just know it's really nice when I'm there. Stuff like that. I just think different. Like, that's what makes so many of the differences. I don't know. I find it so fascinating. So, and there's all types of creativity, and there's all types of ways to experience the world. And I don't know, if you've never thought of it, you know, take a moment and find out. Even things like dreaming. You know, they say that when you dream, you always dream of people. This is the one I didn't understand too. You never dream, you never imagine new people in your dreams. That every face you see in your dreams, you have seen before. Now, I'm going to stop here and say, when I read this, which was even several years before, that didn't even click to me at all, because I don't see any faces in my dreams. I really don't see anything. I know things are going on, and spatial perception. Like, the dream still happens in the sense that I know what the story is. And when I do dream, I have generally really cool dreams. They're like adventure movies. It's always like spy thrillers, and, you know, here's the secret microfilm, and you got to get it like to this other spy in this other country or something like that. It's very much an action film all the time. And I'm never scared in my films, or in my dreams, even if there's what would be considered a scary event. I'm never actually scared. I'm kind of aware. I have very lucid dreams. I'm kind of aware that I'm dreaming. And maybe it's because I don't visually see things, so I know it's not real. There is a part in my brain, like, I know it's not a real thing. I'm just enjoying the ride. But I never see anyone's faces in my head, I just know that there's someone there that I might be talking to in the dream. I know it's happening, but I'm not seeing it in front of me. So I didn't understand the whole, you never see a face that you haven't seen before. Like, you only use faces you've seen to populate your dreams. And I was like, how would you know that? How do you even know that? This is how, you know, people are actually seeing stuff. I thought I love that. So we absolutely experience our dream worlds entirely differently than most of the population. We being people with aphantasia. I don't know, it still strikes me as so cool. Okay, so that's the aphantasia talk. I am working on this. I'm really excited and I want to get this border done so I can finish this off because I'm really kind of excited to do the I'm really kind of excited to do the tutorial for it, which will have a much more detailed, it'll be a smaller blanket, but it'll be a detailed look at how to do the stitches, how to transition into the next kind of panel, and how to plan for yourself what you want to do. If you want to make a smaller blanket, like say you want a child's blanket, you're going to not only make it a shorter length, but you're going to adjust whoops, this is the side view here. You're going to adjust what panels you use because you're not going to want it this wide for your blanket either. So that's the tutorial will cover all of that and how to do each of the stitches and put it together. And of course with a better view so you can see it really clearly, not just me trying to hold this up so you can see what's going on. I think the lighting is better here now. I don't know what happened with that last video. But I'm hoping yeah, I think you can see it better now. So you can see I've done 2 rows here of this horizontal. And when I come through from your perspective, I'm going to again pull it back because that's where they are. This is how I make the horizontal bars for the stitch. You just have to base it on what you're looking at right there and don't think about it too much like going, well, I did 4 of these and I have to do 4 of those. Because when you turn it around, it's going to alternate. And you don't have to keep track of it. You just have to look at what came before so that you know where you're at. You only make a transition and do the opposite, whatever, transition to the next band of squares when you've done 4 rows. Every 4 rows is when you do that transition. So it's very, very straightforward. But like I said, I'm kind of anxious to get going on the tutorial so I can have it up there for you guys who want to do this blanket. It's turning out much better than I expected, or I'm much happier with it. It feels good. It looks really good. It's turned out with a nice balance, and like not everything does. I guess at some point I'm going to have to pull out. I have saved a couple of my failures because I feel like that's only fair, and we all fail, and maybe, you know, I'm going to have to be honest about it because when you're not following a pattern, you can't say that it's always going to work, and certainly not early on. I didn't always know what choices to make. Like, I don't know about you, but if you're following a pattern, you know, I'm using this kind of yarn or a worsted similar weight yarn, for instance, if that's what you're doing, and this size hook, and here is exactly the stitches I need to do, and you will get something pretty close to what the pattern says. That's the whole point. But as someone who is almost never following exactly the pattern, when I first started, I certainly didn't know how to make those choices. So, you know, I really want to make this, and I'm looking at the pattern, and that looks okay, but I'm going to use a bulkier weight yarn and I didn't understand how those choices impacted my final project, and I definitely have some fails. And I have now saved them so that I will end up sharing them with you guys so you can see not only does it happen, but maybe learn a few things about what not to do. So, because I've done them. I'm just getting into the swing now of not making catastrophic mistakes anyway. Call it that. I'm not making catastrophic errors. So we are going through, and I did say before, I don't even know where I've said it because these are just my chatty things, so I apologize that I repeat myself. I did say before I wasn't sure what I was going to work on next for the WIPs. I have projects that really require me to really pay attention, and it's either very finely done, like a fingering weight yarn, and a more complex stitch pattern. It just requires more of my attention, and my brain is not swift enough for that. So if I walk and chew gum, that's fine, but you just can't, I'm never going to blow a bubble also. Like, I just can't get it all together. Some people can, it's not me apparently. So I also try and choose projects that I can just work through and enjoy. I have a friend coming to visit, and I'm really excited to see her. I haven't seen her for years. And so I bought some yarn because there's a few projects I'd like to make her, and it's just easier to send it home with her in her luggage. And so I might do one of those. I know it's summertime, or I was thinking of doing, I should say, and I will do it at some point because they're very quick, right? I'm going to do a beanie hat and also a scarf, which at summertime it's not the time, but it's because she's going to be here in summer and I'm sending her home and she lives in winter. So she will end up getting use for it. But I found Mandala Ombre yarn. When I get my next order, I'll do an unboxing, and it's in that it just her colors. And I'm really excited to be able to, I haven't used that yarn before. I haven't seen it. I'm expecting it to be good because I've heard good things. So I'm going to do that and also make a matching set for her little granddaughter because, you know, I'm kind of cutesy that way, I guess. It'll be fine. So that's one thing, but actually I forgot, and I've decided when I'm done this, I'm going to be working on a summer beach cover. It is summertime. We're going to have lots of beach time. I have 2 cakes of Caron cotton cakes. The cotton funnel cakes, I should say. So it has that kind of ribbed a kind of effect. I'll have to show it to you a little later, but I had bought it before. I actually really like the yarn. I bought more, but in different colors. But the first one I bought is kind of this peach. It's called Peaches, actually. The colorway is Peaches. It's kind of got a peachy, purpley, maybe mauvey variegation color. It's not a striping yarn. It's just a multicolor yarn. And I don't love it. I bought it before I really understood that I don't really like variegated yarn unless I am working on a specific project with that in mind. You know, I really enjoy different stitches right now. I like good stitch definition. And for that, you tend to need either a solid color or at least, you know, if it's really fuzzy, you don't see the stitches as well. A nice shine, a nice twist, and you get really good definition. This Premier yarn is really good for that. I get really, and it's got good elasticity, so it's nice to work with, and you get good stitches. But the cotton cloud cakes, I think you get good stitch definition, but once it's variegated, I mean, as you know, no, not so much. You lose that. Your eye kind of blurs through that. So what I originally thought I might use it for doesn't work. And I've seen a bunch of projects that people have worked on and similar to what I had originally intended, and I don't like it. However, I always play when I get a new yarn. I usually make a little swatch where I try different stitches, like whether it's a double or triple crochet so I can see what it looks like when there's lots of space and really loose, to single crochets. Maybe I'll do like a griddle stitch or a lemon peel stitch or a variety of different stitches to see how it looks together when I've got some of it, if I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the yarn. So that's what I did with the my Peaches funnel cloud cake. Caron funnel cake. The cotton funnel cake. I've done a stitch through it, and actually I kind of like it. I just haven't seen anyone use it. I did like it in a more open stitch pattern and not like a little more lacy looking, just so that I don't have to worry about stitch definition so much, just so the way the colors work up, I don't mind it at all. So what I've decided for my friend coming in, I actually think and it's going to be a close call, but I'm going to make it's very simple, 2-panel, you just make 2 long panels, cover up, a beach cover up. And we can probably do that together. I don't think it'll take really long to work up. If you have any yarn like that, now keep along. If you want to do it along with me, and I'm going to be honest, I will do my best to make sure I show you exactly what I'm doing in each of the stitches. But as with this, I don't know how much yarn I use. I don't know how much time it takes. I don't know what my final decision is going to be for edging or borders until I've done the project. And that's when I can put up a tutorial, because then I know exactly what it is that we're going to do. So on that front, I'm a little sorry about that. But if you're willing to come along with me, go ahead. The Cotton Funnel Cakes is a worsted weight yarn. And you're going to want to choose something that can get wet, right? Like don't get a wool. You want a cotton or acrylic blend. You want something that, because this is for beachwear, right? So keep that in mind. The Funnel Cakes, I think has 400 I want to say there's 400. I have 2 cakes. I think it's 450 per cake, which gives me close to 900. It might be a little bit more than that, but the point is I only have 2 cakes of it. So I'm going to have to make that last. I don't think I'll have enough for the little tie belt. You'll see what it looks like when I get going. I won't have it, but I can use a different yarn to make that. That'll be fine. I actually, like I said, have some more Cotton Funnel Cake in different colorways. I don't really want to use any of my white, but I might. And I actually have a thistle. Like they kind of match in the peaches, so I could be able to use some of those if I wanted for a border or an edging if I'm really short of the amount, like my yardage for what I want to do. But I'm pretty sure I can make it work. I'm going to make it kind of very open and lacy because it's really just a quick kind of cover for when you're at the beach. So if you want to join along with me, that's probably going to be my next WIP that I work on with you guys, because we're moving along on this. And I have finally decided what I'm going to do. Did I really do that? No. Here we go. Let's finish that there. I've finally decided what I'm going to do for this border. Let me get this. Come here. I twisted that around somehow. For the border for this, I took a look, and I was talking before about doing a half double crochet slip stitch around. I want a fairly wide border. I want it to be, I want to say flat, but what I mean is I don't want it to be bobbly. I don't want it to be kind of too boho-y, because this is already, okay, so it's got to be this side. This is the front side. It's already pretty busy up here, right? And I just don't want a whole border that is bubbles and everything else. I'd rather have it a little bit more muted-ish. I don't want it to be double crochets because that's got quite a lot of gape. So something shorter than that. So I originally was thinking, well, maybe I'll do a half double crochet. All right. Okay. Maybe I'll do a half double crochet. And if you do it, like it's not, sometimes it's called a yarn over slip stitch. Basically you go in starting doing a half double crochet, but instead of, once you pulled your loop out, instead of yarning over again and bringing that through the loops on your hook, instead when you go in and you pull your loop, you just slip stitch through with that. You're just going to yarn over first like you're starting a half double crochet. It's very, very straightforward to do, and it just makes it look a little bit different. Obviously, it sits a little bit differently, and I thought it might be visually interesting. However, what I think I'm going to do, which is slightly different, is called the camel stitch. So the camel stitch is simply doing half double crochets, but instead of going into your loop, you're going to go into the third loop, your back loop of the stitch, and just very similar to making a, where you get this kind of ridge where you can, where you see your loops sitting on front. Basically, I'm going to be creating this, but several rows, so they'll stack together really nicely. So I think it will be really nicely visually pretty, like it'll suit it and fit in really well with the rest of the blanket. I don't really use that very often in a blanket border. I haven't made lots of blankets yet because there is a front side and back side, and the blankets I've made to date, let me just double check, all are two-sided. This is the first one that has a distinctive right side and wrong side. So I might as well, now's the time that I can use a border that has a right side and a wrong side. So that's what I'm doing. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to use. And again, I will take the time to explain what I'm doing when I do it. But in the meantime, so heads up, if you are working along with me, I think so far that's the plan. Now, you can use any border you want. Don't forget, feel free to make a change on that. Borders are pretty straightforward, in my opinion, or at least you can do a very basic border without a problem. And when it comes to borders, it's pretty straightforward. You're just going to go around. Your only issue is going to be on the corners, knowing how to take around the corners. There's lots of good instructions out there. And for the the camel stitch border that I'm doing, I will explain how to come in and do the border and do the corners, so that our end product just looks really lovely and beautiful. And that'll be it. We're getting there. I'm going to be done this in the next day or so. So I'll be getting ready to start the next project. And I guess it's going to be that beach cover up. I'm getting kind of excited for it. I always like being excited. That's what it is. That's why we have multiple projects. I generally, when it comes to WIPs, and by the way, WIP means work in progress. And I only say that because for other beginners, it took me weeks and weeks and weeks before I ever heard anyone say what WIP meant. I had no idea what it meant. Now I get it. I'm some things I'm really slow on. So just for anyone out there who doesn't know, feeling a little bit unconfident, and you want, WIP means work in progress. So I find that I always maintain a couple. I have one project that I don't have to think too hard to do. I have a project that is detailed and uses fine yarn. It doesn't necessarily have to be detailed, but I usually try and have a project on the go that uses fine yarn because I really like 2 and fingering weight yarns and sport weight and DK. And I like some of the products, like the projects you can make with them, a lot. But again, it's a lot fussier to work. For the stuff that I work on, it's fussier work. So I don't want to be doing that all the time. That's why I have one that's pretty easy and mindless. Not a lot of ends to work in. I also have one that is more complex and diverse and everything. Lots of ends to weave in, because I want that project. I want to see how it works. I really love the color work and combining the different parts of it, but then I've got a whole bunch of ends to weave in. I can't always face that, so I want to be able to rotate through and pick those up and down. And then my 4th project that I keep going, and it's not really that I keep a project going, I am ready to be able to do a small project when I kind of want to break from thinking about any of those, when I want to have just worked on something and completed it. And so that's when I've got yarns ready so that I can make a scarf or a hat or just something that doesn't take too much time. I get the pleasure of making something new, that little dopamine hit, and also the pleasure of having finished something. Because, really, there's nothing worse than having a pile of stuff that none of it's finished. It all needs a bunch of work, and you just can't seem to get excited about it. So the closer I get to finishing it, the more excited I get again. I'm always excited to start, and I'm always excited at the end. It's the middle part. You kind of sometimes have to keep going. So I really try not to have more than those 4 projects on the go at any one time. If I try and make myself complete one of them before I start the next one. So that's kind of how I balance it. But I keep a stash of, or a slot open to make the quick things. I want to do some placemats. It's going to be little hand warmer gloves, stuff like that. Because then I get the pleasure of starting something new, and then also I get to have finished it, and I can pat myself on the back for, being a finisher at least, got to be a completer, at least a little bit. And that's so far working out pretty well. I'm getting, not that I wasn't excited about this, like I said, it's working up so quickly that I haven't really flagged, and gotten tired of working it yet. One of the reasons I tend to do more stitch samplery kinds of things, I know when I did this raspberry stitch thing, I think this is 10 rows in here. And as I was getting to the end where I'm looking, is this wide enough or not? I was getting tired of doing the raspberry stitch. Like I was getting tired of it. When I made that, maybe that's why I think this works out faster too. When I made that big blanket that was all moss stitch, it was a really big blanket. You know, halfway through, I had to put that puppy down. It's not hard. It's meditative. I really liked doing it, but I just had to put it down because it's tiresome to do the same thing over and over and over again. And so I'm finding with this that I get to change out often enough that it's kept my interest going. And now I'm excited to be coming towards the end of it, you know. So I guess we'll see how much border I get done. It'll have 1 inch, but if I don't get bored and frustrated, maybe I will get to the 2 or 3 inches that I'm expecting. Generally about 7 rows. Keep in mind, if you're planning this and you're not sure about your yarn, that's the biggest problem. Really with my approach where I'm just making it up as I go. You really are not sure about how much yarn you're going to use. Or, you know, there are a lot of really great content creators and crocheters with years and years of experience, and I think they do a better job. I am very new, so I am not experienced enough to effectively predict how much yarn I'm going to use. In fact, for a big project that I had, if you saw my yarn unboxing from Ice Yarns, that I actually bought a lot of, it's a big multicolor project, and I was fine with buying lots of yarn. Like I think I have total is something like 6,000 or 7,000 yards of yarn. Much bigger than I need for this thing. But I have planned on how to use it, the remains, for a scrappy multicolor blanket. Perfect. So I can make use of it, and that way I'm sure I have enough yarn for the project. And that's probably where my limitation is. If you were in that questioning period, I'd say one thing to do is to go online, go to somewhere like Ravelry or in Free Patterns or wherever you need to go, where you can look at a bunch of patterns and look for a similar project. It doesn't have to look like yours, it just has to have similar qualities. So I'm doing a throw. You know, it's kind of a stitch sampler. It's not a huge yarn eater. Like if it was a big cable, if I wanted to do something like, say, with lots of cables and puff stitches, I'm going to look for a pattern that has lots of cables and puff stitches. Doesn't have to look like what I want. Just has to use those yarn eater stitches. And then I can look at it and see how much yarn they used. And so I get an idea of what kind of size I can make with it. If I want to make, and this is what happened here, where I found some throws and I'm like, oh, well, they used 2,000 yards. Well, that's okay. I can, you know, do, oh, except theirs is only 40 by 32. Okay, that's smaller than I want to make. I need more yarn than that. And it gives me kind of a ballpark of what I'm aiming for. I told you for this so far, I'm expecting to use between 2,600 and 2,800 yards of worsted weight yarn for my blanket. That is, final width is going to be bigger than 60, or length is going to be bigger than 60 inches and probably 50 inches wide once I get the border on. So that's a significantly big blanket. And now you have an idea of how much yarn that's going to take to complete. If you do it, and this is how I approached my other things, my other blankets as well. As a general rule of thumb, though, keep in mind that the outside of your blanket, the perimeter of your project, is the longest distance like that you're going to have to run around. One row all the way around is like 4 rows across at minimum, or 4 rows length at minimum, because it's so much wider. It's the widest distance that you're going to go across and the longest. And you have to go all the way around, and that's only going to give you like 1 row of whatever stitch you've chosen. So at least save a full skein for your border is kind of my recommendation when you're doing a blanket, for instance, so that you will have enough. At the very least, you'll get a row or 2 before you run out. I will have a full 200 gram skein for my border, and actually, because I had to order, like I ordered 3 skeins I ordered them in a pack again. I know I have extra just to work with. If you're going to start this, whatever size you make, Once you get beyond a baby blanket size, my recommendation is to save one skein with the idea that it will go to your border however it is. And then you'll be able to work with that and choose something that'll work great. And if you've been crocheting for a long time and you have a great big stash, you're golden. You're going to be fine. Because then you have enough to necessarily work with, you know, like it'd be a lot easier if I had a great big pile in there and I could start making it and not have to worry about it. But I don't have that. I am still at the stage where I'm basically buying yarn specifically for my project. I don't get to buy yarn just because, oh, that looks cool. I'll get it and keep it somewhere just in case. Now, I will say I do have a bunch of yarns. Like I said, that Karen Peaches cloud cake or a cotton funnel cake. Obviously, I'm not using it. I bought it and I have it and I haven't used it yet. But I'm going to use it, and when I buy it, I buy things with something in mind that I will use it for. I just don't always get it right yet. But there's lots of content creators who are obviously wildly more successful and much, much bigger, and they're just in a position that they can go ahead and buy some yarns to share with you guys and evaluate them. I'm not in that position yet. Anyway, so I am coming along here. Where am I at? Okay, so, I'm finishing my 4th row. You know what? Maybe I will stick with you guys and finish this row. Let me take a look to make sure I haven't screwed it up. 4, 4, 4. See, I didn't even have to think. I am just going based on what is done immediately below. There we go. Immediately below that. And I haven't had to screw it up. Once you've set up your first row of each band, you know, just make sure you don't screw that part up, which doesn't take a huge amount of thought. Just I do have to stop and count and double check myself more often. But once you've got that set up, you can just peg off the rest of the stitches. And, you know, as I said, tutorial's not up yet, so if you're working on this and you would like a little more clarity than my blather going on, and you might look up, you know, a tutorial for blanket weave stitch or basket weave stitch. If it's not a visual, like a video tutorial, because I did mine on a reading one online, it can actually look a little more intimidating than it actually is. It can sound more intimidating than it actually is. The language and the way you have to say necessarily describe it to be clear or to be correct when you're trying to set up a tutorial, sometimes the actual doing of it is just much more simple than it would seem. And I would say that with the basket weave stitch, that's very much the case. Once you've got it going, you just follow through with what you did before for your 4 rows. And then you set up your new band and you just click it along. It can sound or it can read or look like it's going to be more than it is. It's really not. If you are new, if you don't ever, please don't be, I'm trying to encourage you, don't let yourself be intimidated. This is straightforward enough that I promise you are going to be able to do this. There'll be no tears at all. It's lovely and straightforward. And you know, it's really interesting to look at. Some stitches are really nice and everything, but you really get a really strong visual with this stitch combo. And I'm liking it a lot, so this will be good for the future. At some point I want to make a cat bed for my cat. Not yet. I mean, I can't get too far ahead of myself, but the more I think about it, the more I might find a way to include this basket weave stitch in it. Not a blanket, a cat bed. I said cat bed. In the design, because I kind of think it might be good. Might be interesting. Here we go. We're coming to the end. Yeah. Now, the reason I know I'm coming to the end is because there is my stitch marker sitting there. And that's the thing. I can't pay attention to that. Otherwise, if I was looking at it, let me show you when I'm done. What I mean. You know, until you get like your next row or 2 of stitches after the band, after my 4 rows here, like until I get the next ones on, I can't really be confident that I counted those rows right. It doesn't look quite right, and I'm constantly double checking myself, and that's again why I have the stitch marker, so I just don't have those doubts of what I'm doing. I feel really good when I see that marker and go, oh yes, I am at 4. Okay, so last, come here, let me get some yarn up here. Last few stitches. Top. All right, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So, and here's my stitch marker, right? I'm not moving them up or anything else on rows. I just needed to make sure I knew which side I started on. So I know that I would do 1, and then coming up that was 2, and then down again and coming back up is 3, or is 4. So that I know I've got my 4 rows done. I don't have to worry about the stitch marker anymore. That was really wonderful and handy. And here you can see, and then maybe if you can see like here. So if I hold this up, see how those squares look? You know, they look nicely square. When they're up there, it looks really good. But if I just look at this, especially when I'm looking at it closely, these feel like they're really long, and they're not. I mean, they're not. And I know this because the very first time I ever did this stitch, I did my things across and I doubted myself, and I went back, and then I only did it at 3, like did 3 rows. Maybe that's better. No, it's not. It is noticeably not symmetrical and not square. So I did 4, and I thought, well, this is wrong. And maybe it's not. It looks great. So I'm promising you, go ahead. You can try it around. Whatever works for you. Maybe the yarn you're using, it is going to look better the other way. But for this yarn, I needed 4 rows, and I needed to not be worrying about it. And now I've done it. This is the end of this panel. This is, I only had the 4 bands of the basket weave stitch for this panel. So I will be transitioning into this here, which is my initial, and it goes from, let me just see. Here is the, oh, I'm on the wrong side. That's why you can't see it. This panel here. So I'll be doing a repeat this distance here. Don't cover my drink. And don't cover my microphone. That's silliness. This here. So from this, right, I'll be doing this part here with the ridges, this little panel that has the bobbles and the cross double crochet, and then ending with this ridge panel again. And then I will be ready to do the border. This is the last section I'm going to have to do on this. This is the section that has the front facing and rear facing, like the right side and the wrong side. No bobbles to see here, right? It still looks fine on the back side, especially because the basket weave stitch and the raspberry stitch have no, like they're both sides. So I still get some visual interest. I just don't get the same kind of full texture that I have on the right side. But to do this and keep this on the right side, this one I do have to make sure that I start this pattern. It's already pre-designed to make sure it'll work up correctly, but I at least start this pattern from the right side. And the way to start it up is I'm going to, oops, when I start, I just have to think this through. Now, this is my basket weave stitch. I don't want my very first row to be the start of my, even though this starts the pattern, I don't want my ridged row here butted right up against my basket weave stitch. In between, let's see if it makes it easier. Let's see if I can do it this way. Oop, here. Nope. Let's see if I can get this up here. Basket weave stitch. Here's my ridge. When I finished this panel, I did a extra row of half double crochets to give a little bit of space before I started this basket weave stitch, just so I have like a little visual space between those panels, because it didn't matter if I made it just slightly wider. And I've been doing that all the way through, so it just, otherwise it's going to butt right against it. And of course the basket weave has a whole bunch of half double crochets, or pardon me, of back post and front post double crochets as well, which is how you're making this. So I wanted to have that little break. So I want to do the same thing again here. So here's my 2 thoughts that I'm going to plan right now before I let you guys go. I'm going to, this is my front side here. When I work on this, I start on my front side. So I need to be at the other end. So already I know that I need to start this on the other side. So this will work out fine. I'm going to work my way to this side and then begin my first edged row that goes here. These are back post double crochets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use probably double crochet myself to this side. I will be starting at the correct side for my panel on the right side, and then I will just start the pattern as I normally would. That's great. Now let's say for instance that I was already here on the right side. Let's say I finished my basket weave stitch on this right corner here. Well, I don't want to start this panel yet because I told you I want to have a little bit of space between this pattern. So what I would do is I would actually go down and back. I would do 2 rows. I probably would put in like half double crochets down and back so I could have that little space and end up on this side. So now I could start the pattern, the little repeat here for this panel insert. I'm hoping that made sense. I'm just letting you know that it turns out I'm way down here and this is perfect. I will only do 1 row of half double crochets to kind of give myself that break, and that will put me starting at the right end. Don't be afraid of making like those kinds of little changes. Like if you were down here and you're like, oh, what do I do? I guess I have to start. No, you don't. Go ahead and put in another row. It is not going to hurt anything. When I do my border, I'm not counting stitches. We're not messing anything up. We're not doing anything that requires you to be that precise, that to adhere, that disciplined for an exact stitch count. We're not that fancy. I'm not that fancy. Certainly not yet. So I'm going to do a double crochet all the way to this end. I'm going to start my last panel I'm going to hold this up so I can just show you where I'm at, of what this blanket looks like. This is the width. It's long. It's long. It's this high. This is it touching the floor right now, which doesn't help you at all, but it's probably up to here on me when I'm standing up. So that's got to be, we're getting close to 5 feet. So close to 60 inches or 60 inches, depends how I'm doing it. This is what it looks like. Now this is rolling over still. I explained that kind of last time, and it's because of the way that these posts are done. But once I put the the border on it, it'll sit flat here. So you can see this is what it'll look like flat. And then there'll be a border over here, but right now it always wants to curl over. And that's just because it's got this back double crochet here. So it'll sit really nice once I've got the border on it. Yeah, I've got no sense of right or left here on the camera. I'll learn. So here we have the panel, our basket weave stitch, another panel again. Here is the middle, is that raspberry stitch panel, and then our basket weave. So we just have that one panel left for it to be exactly mirrored on both sides. I can't remember when I set it, so if it's on the one that I didn't record properly, if you are going to make a smaller blanket, totally fine. Just don't make your length as long. I made this like 58 inches or whatever, 60 inches when I started. That's what makes it so long. And why I needed the extra width so that it would look balanced. If you're going to make a smaller blanket, don't make your length as long. But also consider what your width is going to be. When I get this done, I will give you, of course, the exact measurements, and I'll give you the measurements too of each one of these. If I remember correctly, this first panel is about 7 inches wide, and using my yarn makes it about 7 inches. This one here is obviously longer because I made it wider. I wanted the look of it being wider. Then I didn't want them all to be the exact same width. You might want that. It may work with your smaller piece. So that's what I was going to say. Just don't include this middle panel and you won't have it as wide. Go ahead and take out those sections. I'll give you the measurements I get, so that'll make it a little bit easier. But if you, then you can choose. If you want to make it, 30 inches wide, you might do panel, basket weave, stitch, maybe only do 3 of these so it's not as wide. Panel, basket weave, panel. That would probably work you out to be about 30 inches wide. There's all kinds of ways that you can vary it to make exactly what you want. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to continue on and finish this last panel. The link to the Yarnspirations free pattern that has this panel is going to be in the description. You can go ahead and get started or keep working along with me, and I'm going to finish that last panel, and then we'll just be waiting for the yarn so we can get on to the border. Other than that, I'm so glad you joined me. Give it a like, give it a subscribe. Leave me some comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you have aphantasia. I'd be really interested. And I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. Bye.